Welcome to UK Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell with you today, and I'm joined by my guest, Ray Blakney. Now, Ray's an entrepreneur who's founded a successful Spanish language school in Mexico back in 2008, which he's then transitioned to launch completely online in 2012, and it's called Live Lingua. He's now scaled this to offer multiple languages as well. So he's here to share more with us on how we can expand our businesses by learning our customers' language, literally, but also how things to consider when you run an online learning platform. So here to share more, welcome to the show, Ray Blakney.
Trevor, thanks for having me on.
It's great to have the opportunity to chat to you and learn from you, really. Always good to chat with experts because we always learn something. I'm not in the online learning space myself at this point, but hey, let's not say never. Hey,
Exactly.
I
never expected to be. I mean, so don't get me wrong. This was not a life plan, so I kind of stumbled into it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We've been doing it a long time and it's successful. So it was obviously a good stumble, good direction that you that you headed in. Maybe just to kick us off, how did you get to where you are then? So share a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So it was entirely by accident, right? So I admire those people who say, at 20s, like, this is my life plan and this is what I'm going to do. I'm like, nah, that wasn't me. So little background, I was born in the Philippines. My dad's American, but grew up in Africa. I grew up in Turkey. And then I moved to the United States when I was around 15 or 16 years old, lived there about 10 years. I am American by citizenship, even though English is not my first language. Then I moved to Mexico at, what was that, 28, 29, and I've been here for like the last 14 years. So that gives you a little overview of the kind of cultural background that I have. On the professional side, I come from a family of academics. Multiple people gone to Harvard and MIT in my family. So obviously I was expected to go to college and get a good job and, kind of the typical path that everybody is told they're supposed to do, right? Yeah. Get good grades, go to a good school, get a good job, and work there 40 years. So they give you a little gold watch when you leave and you're done, right? Then you can really enjoy your life. So I did that. I went to college, got my degree in computer engineering, graduated, worked in Silicon Valley, Fortune 500 companies for about 5 years. And what changed my life, oddly enough, was this commercial on TV for the U.S. Navy. Now, my uncle's in the U.S. Navy. My respects to the people in the armed services. But if you start shooting at me, I'm going to run away as fast as physically possible. So, joining the Navy wasn't really something I considered. But the quote stuck with me. And I actually commissioned a piece of art based on that since then. It says, if they were to write a book about your life, would anybody want to read it? And I remember sitting there in my condo, between work one day and just kind of looking at it. And I'm like, no. Like, if I continue on this path, nobody will want to read a life about my book. I mean, a life about my book, a book about my life, or the other way around as well. So literally the next day, I went online and I applied for something called the Peace Corps, which is a volunteer organization where they send Americans overseas to volunteer in developing and third world countries. Just wanted to find a way to get overseas because I kind of had a calling to do that. No entrepreneurship plan in that at all, right? Normally takes a year to get started. Yeah, within 90 days of my application, I had to quit my job, sell my car, sell my condo, and move to what ended up being southern Mexico near the border, where I ended up volunteering with the indigenous communities down there, helping them do a little small business stuff. Yeah. And I met my wife, not indigenous. She was my Spanish teacher. She worked at a language school. We were dating, we got married, and we're like, hey, we're in our 20s. We have no kids. We have no responsibilities. So why don't we start a business together? Great idea, right? For newlyweds to start businesses together. And that's pretty much how I stumbled into entrepreneurship. She was a teacher. I knew how to make websites because I was a computer programmer. They were ugly websites. Just to put things in perspective, I'm not a graphic designer. Like, I'm the guy who made the fancy stuff happen when you hit the submit button. But I don't know how to make pages look pretty. So our website was ugly, like really, really ugly for our school when we launched it. And so we launched our school and got lucky. Within 30 days, we were fully booked. I had to taught myself online marketing, taught myself business. That is now going on. I'm looking at my calendar down here. 15 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
So I have now been in online business for almost a decade and a half, and I would never go back. I love what I do.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the guests we have on say, entrepreneurship wasn't first thing on the list. But I suppose
No,
it's like everything, isn't it? You grow, and as you discover more of who you are, more about life, time is short, isn't it? And it really is. Do we want to spend time doing stuff that nobody will want to read about, as you say, but also just if it's not really fulfilling, what's deep inside, then we're missing something somewhere, and it's like you're just going to live frustrated if you don't follow, even if you make mistakes or you head in a slightly different direction and then you have to adjust. The fact that you take that step, I think, is rewarding in itself, because you know that you're trying something rather than feeling, like you said, stuck in maybe expectations of other people that just doesn't fit for you as an individual. So that's really good.
absolutely. Yeah, there's two little things, if you don't mind, I'd like to add to that. First off, you said, if you go off the wrong track, you might fail. You will fail. I guarantee you. I'll put the caveat out there. Do not expect not to, expect to. You're going to fail. But also you need to redefine failure, because to me, failure doesn't mean something doesn't work. Failure means you stop trying, right? If you did one thing and it didn't work, and you did another thing and it didn't work, and did another thing and it didn't work, and then the fourth thing worked, you didn't fail. You just learned along the way. You figured out other things, and then you actually stumbled across something that was there. And the second thing is something that's really close to my heart. A lot of people say, follow your passion, right? You were saying something that doesn't fulfill you. And I don't actually like that phrase, because a lot of people, if you follow your passion, in my experience, it's a great way to kill your passion, right? If you love windsurfing and you start doing that as a profession, you probably might not like windsurfing quite as much as you did before. The counterweight, though, that at least what's worked out for me is building your passion. I wasn't passionate about online entrepreneurship when I started out, but I worked at it for 15 years and got really good at it. Now I love it. I go to conferences and speak for, in front of crowds about this stuff. I can sit and talk to, my friends who are also entrepreneurs for like 4 or 5 days straight about different like marketing strategies and ways to put up websites and different, business ideas for online. Now it's my passion. But if you'd asked me 15 years ago that like business was my passion, I'm like, no, it just seems like something interesting to try. So that's kind of a mentality that I think a lot of people have. I've never met anybody who's good at something who doesn't like it. But is that most people think that's because they liked it before and then they became good at it? I think it's actually usually the other way around. It's they just worked really hard, became good at it, then they started liking it. Yeah. So if you look at it with that perspective, don't expect to like it in the beginning, but you might love it 5 years down the road.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. If people jumped off the episode now, and I don't suggest you do that, there's some nuggets already that Ray shared with us. So yeah, that's really good. There's a good quote from a guy that I listen to a lot. Never waste a mistake by not learning from it.
Absolutely.
I think it's just such a good phrase. And yeah, exactly. From what you're saying as well, agrees with that. So
I'll add a little bit to that. Sorry to go too far off track for the listeners, but I've been practicing martial arts for over 20 years now, right? In fact, I just kind of got up to another level this last weekend in it. And there's a phrase in the martial art kendo, which is Japanese fencing, which I love. They say, at the end of every class, we go up to the sensei and you sit in front of them and they're supposed to give you some feedback, right? So you actually want them to tell you what you did wrong. And the saying is there are only two types of students who don't get any feedback from their senseis when they go up at the end of class: those who are perfect and those who aren't worth it. And nobody's perfect, right? So if you don't make mistakes and are not learning from those mistakes and getting feedback about them, you're never going to get to that next level. And that's what we look for. That's what I'm trained to look for. I'm like, if somebody doesn't tell me what I'm doing wrong, I ask, because I know I'm doing something wrong. Especially, I launched a chocolate factory in Asia. I owned a chocolate factory in Asia for 5 years. I don't even like chocolate, didn't know anything about business. I needed people to tell me what I was doing wrong, because like I didn't even know what I didn't know, right? So there you go.
Yeah. No, that's really good. It's really good. So maybe share a little bit about what Live Languid actually offers then. How does it differ to maybe some of the other language courses and online things that are out there, some of the apps and things like that?
Absolutely. So it's a complement to a lot of these things, or I'd say even better that the apps are a complement to us. So the way we started was my first business that I launched with my wife were a chain of brick and mortar language immersion schools in Mexico, right? So this was back in 2008, and we were launching those businesses. And then swine flu happened. Now, for those of you who don't remember, swine flu was what COVID was supposed to be, back then, right? It was going to spread around the world, and they closed off all of Mexico borders. Nobody could come in and out. And now all of our students came from other countries to study with us. Obviously, Mexicans weren't coming to us to learn Spanish. It was Americans, people from the UK, people from Europe coming to study with us, people from Asia. So when they closed our border, boom, like overnight, business was dead. Like nobody was at our school, but we still had staff to pay. We had rent to pay. Yeah. So it was actually my wife who had the idea of like, why don't we contact our old students and see if they wanted to have classes over Skype, right? This was 2008, revolutionary concept back in 2008. So I emailed them all. And to my surprise, like 1 out of 3 said yes. So I'm like, why don't I just throw up a little website, see if anybody else in the world wants to take Skype lessons as well. So I put up this dinky website called Spanish-lessons-online.com. It was awful. I mean, it was even worse than our website for our school. It was really, really ugly. Threw it up there. And then 2 things happened. Within 30 days, swine flu just kind of died out. Like it didn't become a thing. Mexico opened their border as our school was open again. 60 days, we were actually making more money off that little dinky website that I made. I put up online with more people coming in than we were at our brick and mortar school, which was also profitable, but it was just taking a lot more of our time. So that is how Live Lingua started. Why do I say the backstory? The reason is because what we did and what makes us different from all these other websites that are out there that are essentially tutor directories. You can go in there and anybody, you and I can go on there and teach English now. I don't know about your background, but I have no business teaching English to anybody, right? You've asked me grammar rules. I'm like, I don't know. I say it this way because my dad told me to, and that's pretty much it, right? So that's what most of the websites that are out there. The reason they're that way is because they were all built with VC money. Somebody gave them $5 million, $10 million, $20 million. Now, what does that mean from a business point of view? And a lot of the listeners here have their own businesses, so they'll know they need to scale, right? If in order to pay back that people who gave you $20 million are expecting to get back $200 million. Yeah. So you need to go out there and get as many students and as many tutors as possible in order to make that happen. That's not the greatest place in the world for you to be a student, right? Where, you're a number to them, and even the teachers are just numbers to them. There's no quality control in that sense. What we did in Live Lingua was we took that brick and mortar immersion school method and we took that all online. So you're not only coming in and it's not a directory. We have, full-time teachers on staff who work for us. We have academic directors. If you ever want, high school or university, you have an advisor you can go to and ask if you're having trouble with that. If you're having, if you want to switch to teachers, we'll do it. We've customized a curriculum for you. So we are, a lot of our language is a little more expensive than them, but expensive in like the one-off cost, but not in your time. Yeah. If you spend 4 hours with somebody who doesn't know how to teach, is that really cheaper than spending 1 hour with a teacher? All of our teachers have college degrees. Most have masters, some have PhDs. What's worth more for you? That 1 hour you just spent 25% more, 50% more on that 1 hour? Or the 4 hours you just wasted your time and got cheap classes for, as far as getting results in the long term? We complement a lot of those online apps that you were talking about. So Duolingo is one of the most downloaded app in the world. A lot of people start on that, get to a level, and they say, why, Duolingo says I'm fluent, and then they go to Mexico or France, and they can't speak the language. Then they come to us. They're like, wait, what was missing? It's because I actually never spoke. It's an app, right? Maybe they'll record your voice every once in a while, but you don't really get that feedback. So they use those bases. They usually continue with the apps, but then they come with us. And then you have a native speaking tutor who also speaks English, but they're native speakers who come to you, and they actually teach you the language. They teach more than the language. They teach you the culture. I'll get a little bit more into that in the future, because we're going to be talking about how it helps you in business. But they'll teach you the language. They will fix your mistakes. Going back to the martial arts analogy, how do you improve? It's not just you need to learn from your mistakes. You can't learn from your mistakes if nobody tells you what the mistake actually was, right? Yeah. And that's what a teacher is there to do. It's like, no, you didn't say that right. This is the correct way of saying it. And that's what our teachers do. And we can get you from we're about to launch a 0 to conversational thing for Spanish. So in 90 days, we'll take you from 0 to a place where you can go to Spain and just, go out, order in a restaurant, ask for directions, all the rest of it. It's not fluent. And, anybody who promises you that, 30 minutes a day and you'll be fluent in a language. If you've ever tried the 6-pack abs in 5 minutes a day, how many people ended up with 6-pack abs with that? Nobody. The only person who did was the rich owner of that business who was able to hire a personal trainer and actually get 6-pack abs, right? Languages are the same thing. It takes work. But imagine in 90 days, if you've never studied a language before, going from nothing to be able to communicate when you go to this country, France, Japan, Mexico, Colombia, whatever it is, that's still pretty fast. When was the last time you learned anything else in 90 days and made a big life change in 90 days? So we'll help you do that. And then we'll take you past that to all the way to fluency.
Yeah, no, that's good. So do you then, if someone sort of approaches you saying, right, I'm now going to move my business into this area, they speak this language, I know you guys teach it, but I don't speak it. you mentioned, you sort of touched on the cultural aspects as well that comes into the teaching. Is there sort of within business, there's a certain language as well, isn't there, that's sort of beyond the tourist language, if you like? So is there the option of focusing on that aspect as well by getting sort of matched to a tutor that will help on sort of that level?
Absolutely. So we have languages, we have business courses, right? Now, generally speaking, business courses, you need to be at least an intermediate level before they make any sense for you to take. If you don't know how to say, hello, my name is, and count to 10, there's no business, you have no business learning the business terms, right? I mean, it's just a waste of your time.
Yeah.
So those kind of advanced courses are for what we call intermediate students and up. So generally, like if you haven't studied, well, you go into our standard program, which is more economical because you're just kind of at standard. Our business program is a little more expensive. The teachers have specialized skills when they're learning that. Some of them actually came from business, became teachers afterwards. So, they actually know how business, not only the language, but how businesses work in their countries. Yeah. And obviously they demand a little bit more pay. But you go up to intermediate level, and then we create these specialized courses for you. And as you said, the cultural aspect is really important because I could teach you the words. So I speak a few languages, but I'm not native speaker of those languages, right? So Spanish, for example, I've been here 14 years. I'm pretty fluent in Spanish, but, I don't understand the jokes. Trevor, you're British, I'm American. We speak the same language, but when I see BBC, I don't laugh all the time. And I'm sure you see American sitcoms and you're like, what are people laughing at? That's the culture. We understand the language. We don't understand the culture. If you really want to break into business, whether online or brick and mortar in another country, knowing the language isn't good enough. Right? Because if you're going to do copywriting, you can't just literally translate it because, I don't know, I'm going to say something like get up. We don't even think about that in English. But literally, what are we getting? And why are we going in the direction of up? I mean, it's just kind of, get up to speed doesn't make any sense. So if you don't understand the cultural side of these translations, your copy is not going to work. Your business is going to fail in these countries. This is on the the straight up grammar language side of things. From the cultural point of view, you need to understand if you're going to a meeting in Latin America, they're going to spend half the meeting talking about their families. Don't get frustrated about that. That's just the way it works, right? And your teacher will teach you that kind of thing so you're prepared for that kind of situation. Yeah. If you go in there, in fact, and you just jump straight into business, you might be considered rude, right? I mean, do you use first name or last names? Do you use titles? In Mexico, for example, there are different titles. You have a college degree, you actually have a title here. They call you like they would call doctor in the cultures that we come from. If you got a doctor, you were a doctor. I have an engineering degree. Nobody calls me an engineer Ray in the US. I'm like, that's just not something that's done here. I'm engineer Ray, when I go in there. So there are all these different nuances to learning a language that you'll never get from an app, and only a teacher, in fact, a native teacher could teach you. And again, Mexico and Colombia and Spain are different. English from the UK and English from the United States are different. They have these differences in the business. And we have teachers from all these parts of the world. We have English teachers from the UK and English teachers from the US. We have English teachers from South Africa, and we have English teachers from Australia. So if you really need specific business in a specific region, we can help you out. And we can even switch your teachers. Let's say your business is going great. You expand to the US and you really love it. Well, you're like, I'm going to Canada. And they're like, okay, let's get you a Canadian teacher. We'll teach you a little bit about that. And then I'm going to Australia. We'll give you an Australian teacher, teach you a little bit about that. Even though the language is the same, very different cultural norms.
That's really good. That's, in some ways, that's like an extra part of the service that you provide, which just on the surface people might miss. So it's really good that you've brought that out. Particularly, like you say, I can speak English, I can communicate to X amount of countries in the world. I'm fine. It's like, nah, not necessarily. Yeah, you might offend half of them without realizing it. And like you say, why are they not laughing at my joke?
I still don't get that in Mexico. I think I'm hilarious, but no, the Mexicans never laugh at my jokes when I'm over here. So yeah, I mean, that to me is being absolutely fluent in a language. When somebody laughs at a joke you make in that language,
Yeah.
Laughs when they're sober, because when they're drunk, everybody laughs at everything. So that should not be your norm. If you're in a business meeting and everybody around you drunk and they're laughing at your jokes, that doesn't mean you're fluent. They might be laughing at you, not with you. So just a pro tip from somebody who's been there.
Absolutely. No, it's and it can make a big difference, can't it, as to whether or not you then progress in a certain region, certain country, or with a certain client.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from on that. I learned a particular way of how the Japanese they present their business card in a certain way, and you present yours a certain way. And it's unless, like you say, you don't know until somebody tells you that that's the best way and what they would expect.
Most people won't be offended. Like the Japanese will not be offended if you give a business card with one hand, right? If you're American and they're like, okay, silly Americans, they're rude. That's just the way they are, right? The difference is if you're competing for business and there are 3 American clients competing for business and you give it with 2 hands, all else being equal, you give it with 2 hands and everybody else gives it with 1. That could be the difference between you getting the contract and the other person not. Absolutely. I know that's a small nuance, but add that and like 10 other things together. And suddenly, if your costs are the same, they might, even if you're more expensive, they might go with you because they're like, okay, Trevor understands us. Yeah. As opposed to these cheaper options, they don't understand how we work here in Japan.
Yeah.
Right. Which Japan is, is one of my favorite countries in the world. But it is about as close to another planet you can go to, especially if you're standing in certain parts of Tokyo. You're like, where the heck did I just land? Right. So you need to understand the culture if you want to work.
Yeah. And it comes back to respect, isn't it? It's like they've taken the time to learn a bit about how we do things. So if they've taken that approach at the initial contact, I'd rather do business with someone like that. That's a lot of, that's as much learning the language, isn't it? Like you say, it's the unspoken parts as well, which is such a big factor, which people can easily overlook. So all good stuff, really good stuff. Let's dig in a little bit because I want to sort of tap your expertise and experiences about running an online platform. So for people that maybe are not doing language stuff, but they're doing courses, they're doing training of some sort. Lots of different options out there. I know depending what the businesses offer, certain platforms or whatever might fit them better. But from a general perspective, what anything that we can kind of avoid or look out for specifically that can help sort of either starting maybe an online training platform of some sort, or if you've already got one and you want to take it to the next level. Big question, lots of questions within that one, but just however you want to tackle that one, I'd be interested to get your perspective on.
Okay, absolutely. And let's see if I go too much off of a tangent. And this will tell you a little bit. I got diagnosed with ADHD like a year ago. I did a brain scan. And my wife kind of looked at me and laughed, and she's like, I could have told you that for the last 15 years. You didn't need to get a brain scan for it. So I might go off track with this, but this, apparently about 50% of entrepreneurs have it. So it's a very common trait among us entrepreneurs, right? As we bounce around from different things. So the first thing, the question about starting an online platform and coaching and teaching in general. I'm OG in this, right? I've been at it 15 years. There were no online platforms to doing it when I started 15 years ago. So most of the platforms I wrote myself because I'm a computer programmer and I was able to. I do not recommend that for people right now. That being said, I have experience in almost all of the big ones that are out there as well. And my advice to everybody who's listening who wants to do teaching, coaching, and hasn't started yet, so step number 1 is pick one that feels about 50% right and go with that. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff because a lot of what gets people stuck up is not so much that Teachable or Kajabi isn't, I can't figure it out. It's that they're looking for 100% perfect. So they never get started. That is what stops most people from launching their course, launching their online kind of training system. Find one. They're all, let's be honest, they're like 80% the same, the slightly different user interface, but they kind of do the same things. I mean, even if you're uploading to Udemy, you're going for like the mass market. You want to sell like $5. You want to sell 100,000 courses for $5. Even their interface looks about like Teachable or Kajabi's or anything else that's out there. So just pick one, go with it, and go all the way to the end. Complete your course in that one. Then once you're making a lot of money, you can switch because you can afford a programmer who's going to actually do all the switching for you. You don't have to worry about it. So that is for question number 1. It is go out there. Do not get stuck with analysis paralysis. Just launch it. Just get started. Be what I call a Nike entrepreneur, right? Just do it. And then figure it out as you go. Now, question number 2, as I said, ADHD. I can't remember what question number 2 is. I just remember there was a question number 2. If you don't mind repeating.
No, sure. So for people that maybe have already a platform, successful courses as well, if they're looking to kind of scale it up, reach out further, any sort of advice on that?
Yeah. So for scaling up courses and all that kind of stuff, there's 2 different directions. 2 things I would focus on. So for building a business, in my opinion, and this has been my experience, you need 3 different things, right? You need the ability to build, you need the ability to sell. And that's what most people at the phase that you're talking about have. So they built the courses and they've figured out a way to sell the courses, SEO, Facebook marketing, all the rest. The key to scaling is the 3rd one, and you need to learn to manage. That means if you want to scale, you need people to help you scale. And that means you need to start learning to manage a team. Doesn't have to be a big team. Like, I built 7-figure businesses with just the teams of 7 or 8 people, right? I mean, this is not something that you need don't think I need 100 people, especially in the online space. You don't need 100 people. I know people who've done it with 4 or 5. I mean, most of them customer support and like one tech guy, and they pretty much build it out there. But that is the skill set that I see most people who are stuck at the, let's say, 6 figures, mid 6 figures, even maybe as high as 7, and you've been stuck there for a while. That's what's going to get you from 7 to 8 figures. In my defense, I haven't gotten to 8 figures yet, but that's what I'm striving for. I'm trying to get to 8 figures, so I'm trying to get my management skill up there. Management and leadership skill. They're kind of slightly different, but you need to be able to inspire people when you talk to them, get buy into your mission, your vision, and then make sure you stay on top of them, or hire a COO if you want, who does the staying on top of them for them, in order to kind of execute well. To get from 0 to 7 figures, it's hustle. From 7 to 8 figures, it's systems and execution. So that's what you have to keep in mind. Even to get from mid 5 figures for some people up to mid 7 is systems and execution. So that's the management component that most people are missing to scale their business. I know it's not sexy. It's not like, hey, learn Facebook ads. No, nothing like that. It's just going every day, make it so that even if, why is McDonald's one of the most successful businesses in all time? It's because they've taught, they have a system to make exactly the same hamburger, whether it's here or in Beijing or in Johannesburg. They'll make exactly the same burger. Or Starbucks. You get the same coffee here as you do in any other part of the world. It's because they created a system, and everywhere they go, there's a process. You put the store this way, it has to look this way, the sign is this way. They greet you a certain way when it's there. They all put the names on the cups when you go to Starbucks. They all prepare the coffee the same way, even if it's sourced from different places. Every business who wants to scale needs to be able to do that. So if you're taking courses, get that process in place.
Yeah, that is sound advice, definitely, for everybody listening. Yeah, so wherever you are on the scale of even maybe first thinking, I could really do an online platform because it would help promote my business and serve customers more. There's some wisdom that Ray's been sharing on that. And as he says, if you've got to the point where everything's ticking nicely, but you're doing it all yourself or you need more people, then make sure you get help. Otherwise, you're going to burn out. And you're not going to know all the stuff you need to know anyway. And you don't really want it. That's not where you got into business, is it? Truth be told. So this is really good. We're sort of almost out of time. Just wanted to touch on right near the end. First of all, how can people touch base with you? So best place to head to the LiveLingua website?
Yeah, so they can go to livelingua.com, which is livelingua.com. To go to my personal website, rayblakeney.com, RayBlakney.com. That's just a one-pager, which has a contact form that comes straight to me. If you go to LiveLingua, it goes through customer support. It'll eventually get to me, but it won't come straight to me. Or you can go to my newest project, which is podcasthawk.com, which is software that helps you get booked on podcasts on autopilot. It's a SaaS product, so podcasthawk.com. That'll all work on the websites. If you want on social media, I'm not very active on social media, I'll be honest, because I don't have time to think of witty things to say every single day. So look for me on Facebook, rayblakeney.com. Look for a picture of somebody sword fighting. I've been doing kendo, Japanese sword fighting, for the last 20 years. So that's my profile photo there. Or just recently on Instagram, I started sharing photos there as well. So you can find me on those 2 places, or LinkedIn, rayblakeney.com as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's good. There'll be some links below in the show notes of wherever people are listening to this as well, so they can click through from there. But that's really good. So for everybody listening, definitely take on board things that Ray shared, whether it's more the perspective of how you approach the next area that you're moving into with a business perspective. If it's a different language, whether it's the cultural side of things, do you need to brush up on your language skills and be aware of certain cultural things that maybe you just have no clue exist at this point in time. Get your team involved, get them all learning the language, the basics, and then the next step, wherever they are and what they need to do on that. Or if you're running an online course and you want to expand it, you want to scale it up, then remember that you have to build the right systems, the right teams in place to then make it happen. Lots of wisdom in amongst all of that Ray's been sharing. So appreciate your time, Ray. It's been really great chatting to you, finding out more about what you do. You've been successful for a long time, so you know what you're talking about, which is why we chat to you. We get the right people on the show because then we can learn, and everybody listening can learn as well. So we don't make the same mistakes. We don't necessarily have to do everything the the same way, we can kind of learn and benefit from everything you shared. So appreciate your time and being with us today.
Thanks, Trevor. It's been a blast.
It's great to have you. It really is. So for everybody listening, remember that we believe in you. We believe in your potential. So make sure you take action with something that Ray shared today that can help scale your business and just improve where you are and where you want to get to. Thanks for joining us. We will catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to UK Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.ukbusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.